I had to stop that impulse to grab the phone and try to reach somebody. In my head. Maybe you've been in this situation before where you felt like you always had to get somebody's attention, especially in a love relationship. And no matter how many times you message them, no matter how many times they assure you that they're there for you, it doesn't feel like enough. It doesn't feel like they really care about you. This could be a sign of what's called a preoccupied anxious attachment style. A preoccupied anxious attachment style is actually something that I had myself, so I'm happy to talk to you about it today so that we can clear up what's going on here, why you feel this way, and why you don't have to always feel this way. Because there are other attachment styles. There's 4 attachment styles, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's preoccupied anxious, there's fearful avoidant, and there's dismissive avoidant. All 3 of those are considered insecure attachment styles, and then the one that we all really want is secure attachment. Before I get more into how preoccupied anxious attachment looks, let me talk about how you get your attachment style in the first place. We all form this. It's a natural thing that every human being goes through, and we get this attachment style in childhood. At least our initial attachment style comes from childhood. The reason why we see this is because we are children, and our parents or our guardians, they're our first relationship with anybody. So we learn the rules of how to relate to people from that relationship. Now, that doesn't mean that we're always stuck with this attachment style because that's what we grew up with, but it's the first one that we have. We spend a lot of time with our parents, and so it becomes an ingrained habit, an ingrained pattern in the way that we relate to people. It's our general go-to style for bonding and attaching with other people. That could be friendships, that could be coworkers, that could be acquaintances, it could be lovers, especially is where we see this the most often. So let's focus in right on preoccupied attachment style. Why does this happen when we're children? Well, when we're children, every child has needs, just like every human being has needs, food, water, emotional needs, caring, like the security that your parents or your guardian are going to be there for you and fend you off against attackers, things like that. And every child communicates that through screaming or trying to get the parent's attention, waving their hands around. And so how the parent or the guardian responds to this is how the child's going to learn to relate to people. In a secure attachment, which is what everybody wants, the parent generally recognizes when the child is trying to get their attention, and they generally give the child what they need, and they do their best to do it. They don't have to be perfect at it, but they do it right most of the time. Unfortunately, there's a lot of parents who don't relate very well to themselves, their own emotional needs, and they don't relate very well to other people or children, and so they may mess up here, and we might wind up with an attachment style like preoccupied anxious attachment. So what happens with a preoccupied anxious attachment style is the mother or the parents or the guardian, whoever's in charge most of the time, they don't consistently meet the needs of the child. They meet them sometimes they get it right, but it's inconsistent enough that the child isn't getting what they need. So because the child's needs are not consistently getting met, they don't have a sense of security inside themselves. They don't always feel safe. That's why this is an insecure attachment style. And because the needs are sometimes getting met, what they learn to do is they learn to get louder. They scream louder. They wave their hands more. They try to get more attention. And this is that preoccupied part of preoccupied anxious. They're anxious because their needs aren't getting met, and they're preoccupied because they're trying to get their needs met constantly. And then from there, this just becomes the pattern of how they relate to people. When they try to make a friend, they're constantly proactive, trying to get somebody's attention to become their friends. When it comes to finding a lover, they always feel insecure. They never feel like that person's around enough. It's this pattern that's been set up since childhood. Now, as I mentioned, you don't have to stay with a preoccupied anxious attachment, and you may find that you attach to different people in different ways. Some people just make us feel more secure than other people, but generally you're going to have this preoccupied anxious attachment if this is the way that your parents raised you or your guardian, and this is how you're generally going to approach people and feel in relationships. But you don't have to be this way forever. I know this because I changed myself from a preoccupied anxious attachment style to a secure attachment style. So how did I do that? One thing to keep in mind is sometimes we call this an attachment trauma because, again, your needs were not getting met. You didn't feel secure as a child, and it could have been traumatizing because if your needs aren't getting met, your life is in danger. That's what trauma is. So one thing that you have to consider, and something that I had to work on myself, was PTSD symptoms if you have PTSD. And what that entailed for me was to be able to learn to soothe myself, to realize that in the moment, whatever I was experiencing and whatever relationship that I was in, that didn't mean that what I felt and what I experienced was what was actually happening. And so I had to teach myself to feel calm, to feel safe, to feel secure, because I wasn't going to get it from outside of me. This was my pattern. I had to learn to give it to myself. And that was part of healing from trauma for me. Of course, a therapist is always helpful. I did have a therapist for a short period of time who was helping me with this, but the work has to be done by you. Something that I had to learn to do was to stop reaching outwards when I felt insecure, to stop feeling like I couldn't sit alone by myself with my emotions and with my thoughts and feel safe. I had to stop that impulse to grab the phone and try to reach somebody. I had to teach myself that I don't need somebody else to do things for me the way that I did when I was a child, that I'm an adult now, and I can soothe myself. Of course, I need to learn those skills from somewhere, so I learned them through reading, I learned them from researching online, I learned them from my therapist. All of those are resources that you could use if you have a preoccupied anxious attachment style. The goal here is to move you towards a secure attachment style so that you can have an internal sense of safety as you move throughout the world, and an internal sense of safety when you relate to people and your loved ones. If you'd like to learn more about your own mental health, head on over to youtube.com/RyanLiberty and hit subscribe. Special thank you to my patrons who make videos like this possible. If you'd like to become a patron yourself and support me in my mission of humanizing mental health, the link will be down below. And now let's hear from you. If you have a preoccupied anxious attachment style, what is helping you to get over it? If this is new to you, what do you see in yourself that makes you think that you have this in the first place? Let's discuss it down below. We can all help learn from each other. As always, thank you for being here. I'll see you around next time, everybody.